everybody, and welcome back to the Real Ethereal Show. I'm Laura Boone, and today I'm excited about presenting another installment in my Enneagram series. And as a lot of you know, I'm building a really wonderful library that I'm very proud of shows that describe all of the Enneagram numbers individually. So I've got a show devoted to every number, and today we're going to talk about number 7 on the Enneagram. And 7, the nickname for 7 is the enthusiast. I like to think that the spirit animal of 7 is Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, the one that bounces, goes crazy, always moving around like a pinball. I would say a pinball is a 7 on the Enneagram. Are you getting the picture? 7's nickname is called the enthusiast. I'm going to give you some more nicknames, though, because I think they help. The generalist, the multitasker, the wonderkind, the dilettante, the connoisseur, and the energizer. I love the energizer bunny, That's a 7. So we all know 7s in our life, and some of us actually are 7s. So we're going to get down to what's the essence of 7, and then how does a 7 disintegrate and how does a 7 integrate? By the way, this is one of my favorite books for the Enneagram. If you don't know your number, you can go to the EnneagramInstitute.com, and I hope Jesse will put that on the screen right now so you can all see it. And you can also just pick up this book. It's a wonderful guidebook, and it's just a simple, there are a lot of good books out there, but I just like this one as a reference. And it's called The Wisdom of the Enneagram. It's by Don Richard Rizzo and Russ Hudson. And you can just get it on Amazon or anywhere, really. So it's just a nice reference. All right, so let's get started. I wanted to read several quotes so you can understand, and you've probably, if you know a 7 or you are a 7, you have said these things or thought these things. Why can't everyone keep up with me? The grass is always greener. A 7 invented that. That phrase, that cliche that we always hear. A 7 invented that. The grass is always greener. There's always something better wherever you are not. If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. I still haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. You could be 90 years old and you're a 7 and you're still trying to figure it out. One of my favorite quotes about a 7 is actually in this book, and it's by Abraham Lincoln. And it says, "With the catching ends the pleasure of the chase." So our 7 friends are, as you can tell by just a few of these comments, they are born with a ton of energy. They are constantly in motion. They don't like to sit still. They have what, a lot of spiritual practitioners and psychologists like to call monkey mind. Some people take medications for that. They call it ADHD or ADD. But whether they're diagnosed with that or not, they are very, here, there. And they just don't like to sit still. They don't like their minds to sit still. They don't like their bodies to sit still. They are always wanting the key about it is not just energy, it's stimulation. 7s are always looking for stimulation. And a lot of the Enneagram types were born out of a childhood circumstance. I mean, some people are literally just born their type, and it had very little to do with their upbringing. But sometimes there's a very distinct childhood environment that creates a type. And, 7s, a lot of times their childhood pattern was that they just didn't feel like they related to either parent. So it's not necessarily that they were abandoned, but they just didn't feel like they related. And they also probably did not get a lot of their needs met in some way. Now, sometimes that can be just lack of food or nourishment. It can be lack of emotional love. Maybe they had everything they wanted, but they just didn't get that attention or that emotional love. But in an existential way, it's like 7s have a hole that they just can't ever fill. So they fill it with activity, stimulation, drugs, alcohol, food, experiences, talk, chatter. I mean, a lot of times sevens are the ones that just, they can't stand silence, right? So they just fill the air, they're constantly talking, because they just, to sit still and to really get in touch with one's emotions and to really get in touch with one's circumstance and to observe can be very painful for a seven, because all of a sudden they realize how empty they are or how little foundation they have. So it's like the rolling stone gathers no moss. A seven's a rolling stone, right? They're not a tree that roots. They're the stone that keeps rolling. Okay, so we always talk about with every number the basic fear, the basic desire, and the superego. Basic fear of a seven is of being deprived and trapped in pain. So that kind of speaks to sometimes, maybe what they experienced as a child or were traumatized with in some way or in some category as a child. The basic desire is to be happy, satisfied, and to find fulfillment. So they are chasing feeling full in whatever way, emotionally, sexually, physically, intellectually. They want to be satiated, and they just feel like, wow, they're hungry all the time for everything. Hungry. So think about it that way. Superego. You are good or okay if you get what you need. So they put the biggest priority on getting what you need. And the last show I just did was on ones, and see how these numbers, they balance you, they're very different. Ones put their needs aside for the principle. Sevens put everything else aside for their needs. So they'll put principles aside, they'll put doing what's right or wrong, they'll put morals aside, they'll put everything aside to get what they need. One of the quotes that I read recently about a seven is that song, whatever gets you through the night, it's all right. Okay, that's a seven, because they feel hungry, they feel scared. The fear is, that they're going to be deprived or trapped. So, if you're coming from a place like that, morals and ethics and doing what is right or wrong, or, maybe somebody gets hurt along the way, that's less of a concern than them getting what they want right then. Right then. So it can be a reckless, careless, frenetic, hyperactive, not very thoughtful existence. Okay? We all know people like that. We've all dated somebody. How many of you have had a boyfriend or a girlfriend like that? That's painful, right? So, or maybe we are like that, and we need to kind of stop and go, wow, yeah, that's me. So those are the disintegrated adjectives and versions of a seven. So some of the integrated versions of a seven, let's talk about the positives. Sevens are the life of the party. They're the, one of the wonderful quotes that I read was, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That's an amazing skill to have. That's an amazing way to live, right? When whatever gets thrown at you, you just see the positive in it and, get up and, make it into a party, right? One of the literary sevens that I really love to talk about is Scarlett O'Hara. Isn't that interesting? So let's think about her for a minute. Constantly boundless energy, right? Boundless energy. Doesn't matter what comes her way. She's always got the energy to face it and keep going. Can't ever make a decision. Which suitor, right? Can't ever make a decision. At every party, chatting it up with everybody all the time. Witty, funny, always has something to say, but can't quite decide on one. Ever. Guy to guy to guy to guy. The grass is always greener, right? Finally ends up with Rhett and still isn't satisfied. Still, while she's with her husband, she's thinking about the other guy. The grass is always greener. Okay, so that's a 7. 7. The life, I love, she has this endless positivity, right? And is negative and is reckless. I mean, you see the recklessness of a 7 in Scarlett O'Hara. She jumps from thing to thing and doesn't even look back at who's been hurt by her decision. But by God, Tara gets burned down, and as God is my witness, I'll never go hungry again. So you know what she does in a time when women don't own companies? She said, I'll start a company. Okay, I'll take the curtains and make a new dress. That's a 7. They're industrious. They have boundless energy. They see an opportunity in everything. They are always thinking about what is next, what is next, what is next. They don't look back a lot. They don't think about what happened a long time ago. I love Gone with the Wind. I wonder with the 7 as the heroine, everybody's always talked about the sequel to Gone with the Wind. Well, I guarantee you she would have never gotten back with Rhett. She would have had a whole different life and would have not thought twice about it and would have been like, you're boring me. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that's a big word in regards to 7s, and that's boredom. Okay? There's a lot of bad things I can think of that I don't want to happen to me, and boredom is not at the top of that list. I mean, I don't want to be tortured. I don't want to starve to death. I don't want to have all these things happen. A 7 is the most afraid of boredom. That's interesting, right? And that kind of describes a lot of their choices, if you think of it that way. They have wanderlust. We talked about lack of commitment. They have the monkey mind. I love some of these famous 7s. This is going to all make sense to you when you hear these names. A lot of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these people are really famous comedians, right? Doesn't that make sense? A 7 loves word games. They love, the 7 is the one that comes to the party, and if things are getting kind of dull, they'll just say something to offend somebody, right? They'll say, in a bunch of liberal Democrats, they'll say, God, I love Donald Trump. Don't you love that he said XYZ today? It does not matter what their political stance is. They are finding a way to stir the pot, okay? Wherever they are, they want to stir the pot. They want to throw the stone and make all the birds fly up. Like they want to rattle the bushes. I mean, they just cannot stand when things get too quiet. And it amuses them when other people are uncomfortable. They put the charge in the room, okay? So it makes sense. Comedians, we laugh at them and we like to be around them or watch them. It's not all the time because they're funny, but it's because they say shocking things, right? 7s love shocking people, and they love to be shocked. They love that adrenaline. A big word, we talked about boredom. Another big word associated with 7s is stimulation. They want stimulation. They need to be stimulated in whatever way, sexually, chemically, energetically. They'll get into fights. They'll be attracted to drama. They'll be attracted to all kinds of things because it gives them stimulation. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. It doesn't matter if it's healthy or unhealthy. A lot of 7s get addicted to lots of things. A lot of 7s can be addicted to sports. They can be addicted to working out. Adrenaline. They love adrenaline, right? So let me get back to my list. Robin Williams. Talk about a monkey mind, right? And just somebody who plays word games, somebody who shocks you, somebody who makes observations that sometimes make you feel uncomfortable, or they make you laugh, or they shock you, right? And he had such a career, want to talk about being bored, right? Just went from thing to thing to thing and did all these things wonderfully, just never stopped moving, ever. And What's interesting about Robin Williams is, he had such an untimely death. He had addictions, which is so seven. But a lot of it, you just always felt with him that it probably wasn't very pretty if it ever got really quiet around him. Like, that he wasn't the kind of person that it just wouldn't even make me feel comfortable to see him sitting there and nothing's going on around him or he's not saying anything. You would almost want to be like, is everything okay, right? There's not a groundedness, there's not a peace, right? So that's the energy of a seven. They are afraid of that stillness. They're afraid of it. They work really hard all the time to keep enough plates spinning in the air that they don't have to notice that they're terrified of being by themselves, that they're terrified of not having stimulation, that they're terrified of the silence or the quiet or the stillness. So Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, 7, Carol Burnett, 7, Lucille Ball, 7. Aren't those all? I mean, you can just see that strain of energy running through all those folks. And what a gift their minds were. What a gift their physicality is to our culture. They make us laugh. They distract us. Sevens build their lives around distractions. So as performers, they help all of us other numbers that are all ingrained in our, grind every day. They give us beautiful distractions, and we love them for that. They show us how to have fun. They get us up out of our chair and get us to dance, right? That's a 7. Benjamin Franklin, he's one of my favorite 7s. We don't see him on camera. We don't see interviews with Ben Franklin. He's somebody in our past that we really only see what he left behind to indicate the kind of man he was. Oh my gosh. And he was a Renaissance man. He was, can you just see that guy every waking moment? He was, flying a kite to see if electricity would strike it. I mean, that man was out doing things, experimenting with things. I mean, he needed so much mental stimulation all the time. Read about everything, traveled everywhere, wanted to go wherever new was happening. I mean, he's such a great example of a 7, and he's such a great example of some of the wonderful inventions and impact that a 7's busy, industrious mind can have on those around them in a very, very positive way. Okay, so if you follow the Enneagram, you know that every number has 2 points or other numbers that are great models for how to be integrated or disintegrated. So in other words, if you know these numbers, and as opposed to your number, it's a path out of your unconsciousness, your blind spots, your lack of growth. It also can be your warning sign. If you head towards those numbers in a disintegrated way, it can be a warning sign as to the fact that you're disintegrating and you're losing it, essentially, in the way that your number loses it. So the 7's numbers are 1 and 5. And most of the time, it is said that a 7 integrates to 5, but they can also integrate to 1. But most of the time it's thought that 7s disintegrate to 1. But I really, the research now shows that numbers really can integrate or disintegrate towards either point. So I'm going to talk about both with each point. So when a 7 is disintegrated and they are extremely overwhelmed, well, let's talk about what they look like when they're very disintegrated. They are extremely reckless. They are typically exhausted. Their bodies, they are very disconnected from how their constant activity is wearing on their bodies. Like they're not very much in their bodies. They're not very focused on their bodies. So they're exhausted, they're overwhelmed. They typically will start to have a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is a big 7 problem when they're disintegrated. So once they've tried everything and they've been busy and they're just at a place where the hamster wheel's just spinning so fast and they just don't know how to get off of it, going to five. Five is the investigator. So really five or one, and one is the perfectionist, really help the seven do one thing in two very different ways. But they help the seven focus. So sevens desperately need to quiet their mind and get centered and focus. So fives are very cerebral and they are hyper focused on whatever it is that they've decided they want to investigate or they want to learn about or they want to deep dive and become the expert in. So if a seven can really try to apply the self-discipline, which is really what a seven typically is lacking, and it's also something that they really go, oh hell no, when you talk to them about discipline or self-discipline. But that's actually what they need to incorporate because they're out of balance with it. They don't need to be totally disciplined. They need to add some self-discipline to their fun, exciting lives. So they need to pick a hobby, pick a course of study, pick a goal that they're going after, or something that they really want to become, a degree that they want to get, something that they want to become an expert in. That can really help a burned out seven. Find a hobby, take a course for 8 weeks and say I'm gonna run, a half marathon, and this is gonna be my training regimen. I'm gonna learn all about XYZ. Okay, that is relief and medicine for a seven. Okay, the other way there could be relief and medicine for a seven is going to one. And going to one is really trying to, instead of making all your decisions based on how you feel at that moment and getting a need met, really putting that aside and thinking of others, putting that aside and making a choice based on a principle or an ideal. Okay, that is really healthy for a seven. That gives a seven balance. Now, how does a seven disintegrate to both those numbers? So when seven feels like no one around them can meet their needs, and no matter what they do, they don't feel satisfied. No matter what they do, they still feel anxious. They still feel empty. The grass has been greener and greener and greener and greener, and they just start to get, quite frankly, angry that what they're doing isn't working, and they put it out on other people. Instead of going, wait a minute, maybe, wherever I go, there I am. They can be more like a one and say, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. This is right and that's wrong. I'm right and you're wrong. So they can become that judge and that critic out of anger and, quite frankly, just dissatisfaction. And they put it out on other people. And it can be very upsetting. Like a seven can be this fun-loving person, and all of a sudden they just kind of hit a wall, and then they're like, judge and jury to everyone around them. And they're irritated and they're angry and they're pissed off that things aren't right. That's when they disintegrate to a one. When they disintegrate to five, they, out of the same frustration of not getting their needs met, my needs aren't met, I keep asking you, I went from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend, and I'm still pissed off because I'm still not feeling settled. I'm still not wanting to commit. I'm still pissed off. I can't get no satisfaction. The Mick Jagger song, right? They're pissed. I can't get no satisfaction because, by the way, the problem is not out there. The problem is that they kind of have this black hole that they keep trying to fill, but that's too painful to get still and really understand, right? So when they disintegrate to five, they start getting paranoid. They start getting paranoid about how, maybe people are trying not to give me what I want. Maybe people are doing that on purpose to not give me what I want. Maybe there's a conspiracy against me getting what I need and what I want, right? So those are both the negative disintegrations that a seven can go to. So here's how this is helpful, you guys. if you are a 7 or you know a 7, when you start to understand these signs that I just sort of described of how they can get when they're disintegrating, it's a time to really be loving towards yourself if you're a 7, or towards a 7 if you love them, right? And gently remind them, this is what you do when you're under stress. This is what you do when you're overwhelmed. And a 7, what they need more than anything else is somebody loving who's non-judgmental to kind of take them by the arms and say, you look tired. Aren't you tired? Can we just kind of have some quiet time together? Like, how do you feel? How do you feel? What do you need right now? Have you really thought about what you need right now, right? Do you need to maybe apply some discipline to your life, i.e. go to 1? Do you need to have something to really focus on and quit letting all these other issues and distractions, cloud your reality? Going to 5. So that, going to 5 is a help. So those loving reminders that you can learn to use with yourself if you're a 7, or with your partner or your child or your coworker, can really, really help a 7 kind of slow down, stop, and go, wait a minute, I'm disintegrated right now. I need to get back on track. So in conclusion, I always want to talk about, always want to thank the number for what they give us, what they give the earth, what they give humanity. And I always want to talk about what we all could learn from a 7, or what we all need we need a little more 7 in our lives. And those things are, in summation, fun. 7s show us how to have fun. All work and no play make Jack a dull boy, right? I love that saying. Okay, that is 7 came up with that saying. Life can be fun. Life can be silly. We don't have to take everything so seriously all the time. 7s teach us that. We all need to take a break and laugh. We all need to take a break, and we all need to try new things. We need to not stay in a box. I love Auntie Mame is one of my favorite 7s. Auntie Mame said, life is a banquet and most poor fools are starving to death. Okay, that's a 7's take on life. Let's travel. So many of us have all this cool, fun opportunity in front of us every single day, and we don't look at it, or we just don't have the energy. We don't take the time to get up and go try new things. So 7s, thank you very much for showing us how to have more fun, how to take risks. And, I always like to say 7s add the spice. 7s are the allspice, the shaker. Whenever 7's around, things get a little more tasty. They get a little more spicy. They have a little more flavor. So thank you, 7s, for adding the flavor to our lives. I hope this helped you guys. I love hearing from you. So if you are a 7 or you have a 7 in your life, let me know if some of these things resonated. If you thought of new things that resonated that would fit into what I just talked about, I'd love to know about it, because it helps me with my research and my work. So thanks, you guys. Take care, and we'll see you next time on the Real Ethereal Show.